The colony ship Horizon drifted silently through the endless void, a beacon of human hope carrying families destined to establish a new home among the stars. Inside the ship's residential module, life hummed with quiet determination. Parents worked, children studied, and the gentle hum of life support systems created a rhythmic backdrop to their interstellar journey. 12-year-old Jake Miller sat in the education pod, his fingers dancing across a holographic display. Unlike traditional classrooms, this learning environment was dynamic, adaptive, and designed to prepare children for the unpredictable challenges of space colonization. Survival wasn't just a subject, it was a way of life. Biomechanical system failure simulation, the interactive display announced. Jake's eyes narrowed, his mind already calculating potential solutions. Around him, other children worked on similar scenarios. Emergency medical responses, technological repair protocols, psychological stress management. These weren't ordinary children. They were the next generation of human colonists, trained from birth to survive in the most hostile environments imaginable. Olivia Rodriguez caught Jake's eye from across the pod. A slight nod passed between them, a communication born of years of friendship and shared training. Her mother, a renowned cybersecurity expert, had ensured Olivia could hack, repair, and survive in ways most adults couldn't comprehend. The first warning came as a subtle vibration. Most would have missed it, but not these children. Jake's hand instinctively touched the emergency communication band on his wrist, a device that looked simple but contained advanced survival technology developed by the Colonial Preparation Initiative. Alarms erupted seconds later. Unidentified vessel approaching. The ship's AI announced in a calm, almost conversational tone. Defensive protocols initiated. But something was wrong. The children could feel it. The typical drill responses felt different this time. Real danger crackled through the air like static electricity. Marcus Williams, seated near the environmental control panel, had already begun analyzing the ship's external sensor data. His fingers moved with practiced precision, pulling up tactical displays that would make most military strategists proud. At 13, he could read a ship's defensive capabilities faster than most adult commanders. The cutting beams came without warning. Razor-sharp energy sliced through the Horizon's outer hull like paper, creating gaping wounds in the ship's protective skin. Emergency force fields flickered, struggling to contain the breach. "Zornak Raiders," Marcus whispered, his voice a mix of academic observation and visceral fear. The insectoid aliens burst through the breach, their exoskeletal armor gleaming under emergency lighting. Mandibles clicked, translation devices converting their harsh communication into broken human language. They moved with predatory efficiency, scanning and selecting potential captives. But they had made a fundamental mistake. These weren't ordinary passengers. These were carefully trained colonists, children who had been prepared for every possible scenario of interstellar conflict. Jake's survival training kicked in immediately. While parents were being forcibly separated from their children, while terror threatened to consume the ship, he was calculating. Observation points, potential escape routes, weaknesses in the aliens' approach. Olivia's hand moved almost imperceptibly, activating a hidden communication protocol. A series of subtle gestures, a pattern of breaths, a specific way of standing. These were their secret language, developed through years of collaborative training. The Zornak believed they were collecting docile laborers, victims, cargo. They had no idea what they were truly about to encounter. As children were herded into containment units, Jake caught Olivia's eye. No words were exchanged. None were needed. Their shared look carried volumes, a promise of resistance, of survival, of turning this moment of apparent defeat into an opportunity for victory. The first phase of their counterattack had already begun. The processing facility stretched before them like a nightmare of sterile metal and cold technology. Zornak technicians moved between rows of containment units, their multi-jointed limbs clicking against the polished floor. They treated the human children like specimens, not beings, a fatal mistake that would cost them dearly. Jake Miller observed everything. His eyes, seemingly downcast, were actually mapping every detail of the facility. The ventilation systems, the security patrol patterns, the subtle inconsistencies in the alien technology. Years of survival training had taught him that information was the most valuable weapon. Nearby, Olivia Rodriguez worked on her tracking device with surgical precision. What looked like an idle scratch was actually a carefully planned deconstruction. The hair clipped from her mother's emergency survival kit became a multipurpose tool. She decoded its potential uses during countless training simulations, never imagining she'd actually need these skills. Marcus Williams sat motionless, but his mind raced. The environmental control systems were a language he understood intimately. Most 13-year-olds worried about video games or social interactions. Marcus had spent his life studying complex technological systems, preparing for scenarios most would consider impossible. A Zornak cinesociologist named Kreltax moved between the containment units, making notes on a holographic display. The being's multiple eyes scanned the human children, expecting to see fear. Instead, it encountered something far more disturbing. The children weren't breaking. They weren't crying. They were studying. Each child had been prepared for scenarios far beyond typical survival training. Their colony preparation program wasn't just about physical endurance. It was about mental resilience, technological adaptation, and collective survival. Elena Rodriguez caught Marcus's eye. A subtle hand movement, barely perceptible, communicated a complex message. They were already building a network, right under the alien sensory appendages. The facility's design was meant to be perfect, impenetrable. But perfection is always an illusion, especially when faced with human creativity. Jake noticed the first weakness in their containment system within hours of arrival. A minor calibration error in the energy restraints. Most would overlook it. To him, it was an opportunity. He began to map out potential exploitation points, his mind working like a complex algorithm. Olivia had already begun dismantling her tracking device. What the Zornak considered advanced technology was, to her, just another puzzle waiting to be solved. Her fingers moved with a surgeon's precision, carefully separating microscopic components. The aliens' first mistake was underestimating their prisoners. Their second was believing technology could overcome human adaptability. Marcus discovered the facility's communication network had a fundamental flaw in its routing systems. What seemed like a secure, multi-layered communication grid had subtle vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities he could exploit. Elena began developing a communication method using nothing more than slight temperature variations and carefully timed vibrations. The facility's own environmental systems would become their communication network. Kreltax watched the children with growing unease. Something was happening that defied all their xenological research. These weren't typical prisoners. They weren't even typical humans. Each child represented a complex system of survival. Each was both an individual and part of a larger, interconnected network. They weren't just adapting to their environment. They were beginning to control it. The Zornak had captured what they thought were children. In reality, they had brought wolves into their den, and the hunt was about to begin. The first sign of trouble came as a barely perceptible temperature fluctuation in the main processing wing. Zornak technicians dismissed it as a minor environmental anomaly. They were wrong. Jake Miller had discovered the facility's cooling system was more than just a temperature regulation mechanism. It was a neural network of interconnected systems, each component a potential point of manipulation. His fingers traced invisible patterns on the surface of his containment unit, mapping out potential interference points. Marcus Williams worked simultaneously on a different approach. The environmental control panels looked impenetrable to the Zornak guards. To him, they were an intricate puzzle waiting to be solved. Each panel had a rhythm, a pattern of energy flow that most would overlook. But Marcus saw music where others saw only metal and circuitry. Olivia Rodriguez focused on the communication systems. Her mother's cybersecurity training hadn't been theoretical. It had been practical, ruthless, and comprehensive. She understood that true technological warfare wasn't about brute force, but about subtle manipulation. The first system failure seemed random. A cooling unit in the Western Processing Wing suddenly malfunctioned, its temperature sensors going haywire. The Zornak technicians ran diagnostics, found nothing conclusive, and reset the system. 37 minutes later, a primary navigation relay in the eastern section collapsed. Then another, and another. What looked like random system failures were anything but random. Each malfunction was a carefully orchestrated note in a symphony of technological rebellion. Elena Rodriguez had begun to understand the alien technology at a level that terrified the Zornak researchers. Where they saw impenetrable systems, she saw interconnected vulnerabilities. A slight recalibration here, a microscopic adjustment there. The entire facility was becoming a playground of technological subversion. Krell Tax, the lead xenosociologist, began to realize something was fundamentally wrong. The human children weren't just adapting. They were attacking. But the attacks were so subtle, so perfectly integrated into the facility's existing systems, that they defied traditional understanding of resistance. Jake's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Each system failure was designed to look like a natural malfunction. No single event seemed connected, but collectively, they were creating a web of technological chaos that was slowly strangling the facility's operational capabilities. Marcus discovered how to use the facility's maintenance robots as unwitting participants in their resistance. A slight recalibration of their navigation protocols, a microscopic adjustment to their energy consumption patterns. Suddenly, these robots became instruments of subtle sabotage. Olivia's communication network grew more complex by the hour. What started as simple vibration patterns evolved into a sophisticated communication system that the Zornak couldn't even detect. Each child became a node, each interaction a carefully coded message of resistance. The aliens' first response was confusion. Their second was panic. By the end of the first week, 3 critical processing wings had been rendered partially inoperable. The Zornak brought in their top technicians, their most advanced diagnostic equipment. They found nothing. No obvious tampering. No clear source of the systematic failures. But the children knew. Each malfunction was a message, each system failure a declaration of war. They were transforming from prisoners to strategists, from captives to architects of their own liberation. The Zornak had made a critical mistake. They had captured children who had been trained not just to survive, but to overcome. And their rebellion was just beginning. Communication between labor camps wasn't just a possibility. It was their lifeline. The Zornak believed they had separated the children, broken their potential for collective action. They couldn't have been more wrong. Jake Miller understood that true communication transcended traditional methods. The maintenance facility's infrastructure became their secret language. Slight variations in temperature, microscopic vibration patterns, subtle energy fluctuations that would go unnoticed by alien sensors. In the Northeastern Processing Wing, Olivia Rodriguez discovered her first breakthrough. The facility's cooling system wasn't just a temperature regulation mechanism. It was a potential communication highway. Each pipe, each ventilation shaft became a channel for coded messages. Marcus Williams approached the problem with mathematical precision. He began mapping out communication patterns using the facility's own maintenance robots. What looked like random movement to the Zornak guards was actually a complex communication protocol. Each robot's path, each subtle deviation told a story. Elena Rodriguez focused on the electromagnetic spectrum. The facility was a living, breathing system of energy and information. Most saw walls and machines. She saw a complex network waiting to be decoded. Their first successful long-distance communication came unexpectedly. Marcus discovered that the maintenance robot's internal cooling systems could be manipulated to create microscopic temperature variations. These variations, when properly coded, could transmit complex messages across significant distances. Olivia developed a communication method using light reflections, a slight adjustment of a metal surface, a carefully angled piece of debris. What seemed like random glints became a sophisticated visual communication system that could transmit intricate messages right under the guard's sensory appendages. Jake's contribution was equally ingenious. He realized the facility's waste management system could be used to transmit information. Microscopic changes in waste flow rates, subtle pressure variations, each movement a potential message. Alina created a backup system using electromagnetic pulse patterns so subtle they would register as background noise to the facility's sensors. Each pulse carried fragments of information, pieces of a larger puzzle that only the children could decode. The Zornak researchers noticed something unusual. Their facility seemed to be breathing differently. Systems communicated in ways that defied their understanding. What they interpreted as minor system anomalies was actually a sophisticated communication network spreading like a neural web. Communication between camps revealed the true extent of their situation. Each child shared critical information: facility layouts, guard rotation schedules, technological vulnerabilities. What had started as individual survival strategies was evolving into a coordinated resistance movement. Marcus mapped out the communication routes with scientific precision. Each message was a carefully encrypted piece of intelligence: location markers, resource assessments, potential escape vectors. The entire facility was becoming a living, breathing communication network. Olivia's cybersecurity training proved invaluable. She developed encryption methods that would make military communication specialists proud. Each message was a complex puzzle, impossible to decode without the specific knowledge these children possessed. Jake understood that their greatest weapon was adaptability. The communication network wasn't just about sharing information. It was about creating a collective intelligence that could respond to any situation. Alina's technological insights added another layer of complexity. She began to understand the alien technology at a level that terrified the Zornak researchers. Where they saw impenetrable systems, she saw interconnected vulnerabilities. By the end of the first month, they had created something unprecedented: a communication network that spanned multiple labor camps, a collective intelligence that fought and moved as one. The Zornak had separated these children, believing it would break their spirit. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous: a unified resistance. Alina Rodriguez sat quietly in her containment section, her eyes never revealing the storm of calculations racing through her mind. To the Zornak guards, she was just another captured human child. But her mind was a battlefield of technological innovation that would soon bring their entire system to its knees. Her mother, a lead quantum computing engineer, had taught her more than just coding. She learned systems thinking, the art of understanding technology not as isolated components, but as living, interconnected networks. Where most saw impenetrable alien technology, Alina saw a complex puzzle waiting to be solved. The first breakthrough came during a routine maintenance cycle. Most children would have seen a standard computer terminal. Alina saw a gateway, a potential vulnerability in the alien communication infrastructure. Her fingers, small but precise, began mapping out the system's architectural weaknesses. Jake Miller provided crucial support from his section. Through their intricate communication network, he shared observational data about guard rotations, system maintenance schedules, and subtle technological patterns. Each piece of information was a building block in Alina's growing strategy. Marcus Williams contributed computational models that helped Alina understand the alien technology's underlying logic. What seemed like random technological patterns to the Zornak were mathematical sequences to Marcus: predictable, exploitable, breakable. Alina discovered the first major vulnerability in the facility's energy distribution system. The Zornak prided themselves on their supposedly impenetrable technological architecture. But every system has a weakness. Every fortress has a crack. She began by creating microscopic interference patterns in the energy relay systems. At first, the changes were so subtle that they went completely unnoticed. A slight power fluctuation here, a minimal energy redirection there. Each adjustment was a precision strike against the facility's technological backbone. Olivia Rodriguez complemented Alina's work by developing communication methods that could transmit their findings without detection. Using complex frequency modulation techniques learned from her cybersecurity expert mother, Olivia created communication channels that blended perfectly with the facility's background noise. The Zornak technical team first noticed something was wrong when minor system inefficiencies began to accumulate. Power consumption rates showed unexplained variations. Communication relays experienced micro-interruptions that defied standard diagnostic protocols. Alina's strategy was multifaceted. She wasn't just attacking the system. She was learning it, understanding its core architecture, and turning its own complexity against itself. Each technological barrier became an opportunity for innovative subversion. Marcus provided mathematical models that helped predict and exploit system vulnerabilities. His ability to see patterns where others saw chaos allowed Alina to refine her approach with scientific precision. Jake's observational skills added another layer of complexity to their resistance. He tracked guard responses, technological repair patterns, and systemic reactions to their interventions. Each observation became another piece of their strategic puzzle. By the third week, Alina had developed a method to redirect energy resources within the facility subtly. Power would be silently reallocated, creating controlled disruptions that looked like standard system maintenance to casual observers. The Zornak technical teams worked overtime, running countless diagnostics. They found nothing conclusive. No clear point of interference. No obvious technological breach. Yet their systems continued to degrade, slowly but inexorably. What the aliens failed to understand was the fundamental difference between their technological approach and human innovation. The Zornak saw technology as a static, controllable entity. Alina saw it as a living, adaptable system that could be manipulated, redirected, transformed. Each system failure was a message. Each technological intervention a declaration of war. The children weren't just resisting. They were rewriting the very rules of technological engagement. And they were just getting started. The escape began with a whisper, a barely perceptible vibration that traveled through the facility's intricate network of pipes, ventilation shafts, and communication channels. Jake Miller had been planning this moment since their first day of captivity. Each child understood their role with crystal clarity. This wasn't just an escape. It was a carefully choreographed symphony of technological and human precision. Marcus Williams had spent weeks mapping the facility's entire infrastructure. Every security checkpoint, every maintenance corridor, every potential weakness became a strategic asset. His computational models predicted multiple escape scenarios with mathematical precision. Olivia Rodriguez worked on the communication systems. She developed a complex encryption method that would allow the children to coordinate their movements without alerting the Zornak guards. Each signal was a carefully coded burst of information, indistinguishable from the facility's background noise. Alina Rodriguez targeted the facility's core technological systems. Her interventions had been subtle, gradual. Now, they would become catastrophic. She began a cascading sequence of system failures that would create the perfect moment of chaos. The first domino fell in the Eastern Processing Wing. A cooling system suddenly went critical, triggering emergency protocols. Zornak guards rushed to contain the situation, their movements becoming predictable, their attention divided. Jake initiated the second phase. The maintenance robots, which had been their silent allies, suddenly began to malfunction. But these weren't random breakdowns. Each robot moved with a precision that created maximum confusion. They blocked corridors, jammed doorways, created impossible-to-predict patterns of movement. Marcus's computational models showed their exact trajectories. What looked like random malfunction was a carefully planned disruption of the facility's security protocols. Olivia's communication network spread the coordinated plan, a series of microscopic signals, too subtle for the alien sensors to detect. Each child knew exactly when to move, exactly how to move. Alina launched her most critical attack. The facility's primary energy distribution systems began to fail in a carefully planned sequence. Not a complete shutdown, That would be too obvious. Instead, a series of partial failures that would create maximum confusion. Security systems flickered. Containment units experienced momentary power losses. Automated defense mechanisms became unpredictable. The Zornak guards found themselves fighting against a facility that seemed to be working against them. Doors opened when they should have closed. Security systems failed at critical moments. Communication channels became unreliable. Jake had planned for every contingency. The children had training that went far beyond typical survival scenarios. This was a generation prepared for the most extreme interstellar challenges. Olivia's communication network kept them perfectly synchronized. Each movement, each action was part of a larger, interconnected plan. They moved like a single organism, adapting, responding, overcoming. Marcus calculated their escape routes with scientific precision. Every potential obstacle had been anticipated, every possible intervention planned. Alina continued her technological warfare, creating a fog of technological confusion that would mask their escape. The facility's primary security chief watched in growing horror. Their supposedly impenetrable system was being dismantled from within. Not by brute force, but by an intelligence that defied their understanding. In the span of 27 minutes, the children transformed from prisoners to liberators. They weren't just escaping. They were sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humans are not victims. Humans are survivors. And they were coming home. The news spread faster than light through the galactic communication networks. At first, it seemed impossible. A group of children had not only survived capture by the Zornak Collective, but had completely dismantled their regional labor infrastructure. The galactic communication hub went silent for several moments, a rare occurrence in an era of constant information exchange. Diplomatic channels buzzed with disbelief. Intelligence agencies from multiple star systems began pulling every available data stream, desperate to understand what had happened. Ambassador Helena Rodriguez, Olivia's aunt, found herself at the center of an unprecedented diplomatic storm. The human representative to the Interstellar Council was bombarded with requests, demands, and incredulous inquiries. They did what? Asked K-Fork, the Pleiadian diplomatic attaché, his tentacle-like appendages writhing in confusion during an emergency session. The evidence was irrefutable. Surveillance records, facility logs, and communication intercepts told a story that defied conventional understanding. A group of children had outmaneuvered one of the most technologically advanced predatory species in the known galaxy. Jake Miller's parents, both senior colonial strategists, were called to provide context. Their testimony revealed the truth behind the children's capabilities. The human colonial expansion program wasn't just about physical survival. It was about creating a generation of adaptable, intelligent survivors who could overcome any challenge. Marcus Williams' computational models became the subject of intense scientific scrutiny. Researchers discovered that the children had used technologies and strategic approaches that challenged everything known about interspecies conflict. Alina Rodriguez's technological interventions were studied by top cybersecurity experts across multiple star systems. Her methods of system infiltration were so sophisticated that they rewrote understanding of technological warfare. The Zornak Collective found themselves transformed from a feared predatory species to a galactic laughingstock. Their communication channels were flooded with mockery. Other species that had long feared Zornak raids now saw them as vulnerable. Diplomatic channels exploded with activity. The Human Colonial Administration presented the Zornak with an ultimatum so precise, so carefully worded that it left no room for negotiation. Complete reparations, formal apologies, guarantees of future non-interference. Intelligence agencies from dozens of star systems began requesting detailed reports. How had children accomplished what entire military forces had failed to do? The answer was both simple and complex. Human colonial training had transformed these children into something beyond traditional understanding of intelligence and survival. They weren't just survivors. They were a new form of human capability. The Interstellar Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from various species watched recordings of the children's escape, their technological interventions, their perfect coordination. They were prisoners, Kevork observed, and yet they were never truly captive. Olivia Rodriguez's communication techniques became a case study in adaptive intelligence. Marcus Williams' computational approaches were dissected by top scientific minds. Elena Rodriguez's technological warfare became required study in military academies across multiple star systems. The escape did more than free a group of children. It sent a message to the entire galaxy about human potential. News networks ran continuous coverage. The children became symbols of resistance, of human adaptability. Their faces appeared on communication streams across hundreds of star systems. The Zornak Collective's reputation was shattered. What had once been a feared predatory species was now seen as fundamentally vulnerable. Their technological superiority had been exposed as a myth. Diplomatic negotiations became a nightmare for Zornak representatives. Every attempt to minimize the incident was met with precise, devastating counter-arguments backed by irrefutable evidence. Humans had always been underestimated. No longer. The galaxy was learning a crucial lesson. Never underestimate human potential, especially not when that potential came from its children. The reunion was unlike any diplomatic event in galactic history. Family members waited in a specially prepared reception center, a facility designed to handle the most complex international and interstellar protocols. But nothing could prepare them for the children who walked through those doors. Jake Miller was the first to enter. His parents, both senior colonial strategists, stood frozen. The boy who left was a child. The young man who returned was something else entirely. Confidence radiated from him, not the bravado of youth, but the calm assurance of someone who had looked into the face of impossible odds and emerged victorious. Olivia Rodriguez moved with a precision that seemed almost mathematical. Her mother, a renowned cybersecurity expert, noticed subtle changes in her daughter's body language. Every movement was calculated, every gesture purposeful. The experience had transformed her into something more than just a child. Marcus Williams carried with him computational models that would revolutionize military and diplomatic strategy. Where most saw a teenager, military analysts saw a strategic genius. His parents watched in a mixture of pride and amazement as top researchers requested immediate debriefings. Elena Rodriguez's technological insights became an immediate focus of scientific communities across multiple star systems. Her mother, a quantum computing engineer, realized her daughter had developed capabilities that went far beyond anything they had imagined possible. The medical evaluations were unprecedented. Psychological teams expected to find trauma. Instead, they discovered children who had not just survived, but had fundamentally transformed themselves. Each child showed remarkable psychological resilience, adaptive capabilities that defied traditional understanding of human potential. Diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. The Zornak Collective found themselves facing consequences beyond their worst nightmares. Economic sanctions, restricted travel rights, mandatory reparations. Their entire regional infrastructure was systematically dismantled by precise, carefully orchestrated diplomatic interventions. Jake's strategic analysis of the Zornak facility became a landmark study in military academies. His ability to identify and exploit technological vulnerabilities was studied by top strategic analysts from multiple star systems. Olivia's communication techniques became a breakthrough in interspecies communication technologies. Her methods of creating undetectable communication networks were immediately classified as top priority research by colonial defense departments. Marcus's computational models were so advanced that they sparked an entirely new field of strategic analysis. Universities and research centers competed to understand the depth of his strategic thinking. Elena's technological interventions rewrote understanding of cybersecurity and technological warfare. Her methods became required study for top technological defense programs across multiple star systems. The children weren't just survivors. They were a new benchmark of human potential. Global media coverage transformed them into symbols of resistance, but those who knew them understood the deeper truth. This wasn't about heroism. This was about the fundamental human capacity to adapt, to overcome, to transform seemingly impossible situations. Colonial preparation programs were immediately reviewed and enhanced. The children's experience became a critical case study in survival, resistance, and strategic thinking. The Interstellar Council held special hearings. Each child was asked to provide detailed accounts of their experience. What emerged was not a story of victimization, but a blueprint of human adaptability. Their parents watched with a mixture of pride and profound respect. These weren't just their children anymore. They were representatives of a new understanding of human potential. The Zornak Collective became a cautionary tale. Their technological superiority had been exposed as a fundamental weakness. They had underestimated the most dangerous variable in any conflict: human creativity. As the debriefings concluded, one thing became abundantly clear. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson. Humanity was not to be underestimated, especially not its children.